The morning air felt slightly cold, carrying the smell of rain that had fallen during the night. Aisha adjusted the scarf around her shoulders as she stood at the edge of the crowded street, holding each of her twins by the hand. The city was already alive with noise, cars rushing past, vendors calling customers, and people hurrying toward their daily responsibilities. For most people, it was just another ordinary day, but for Aisha, every morning was a quiet battle between the past she was trying to forget and the future she was trying to build. Her twins, Ayan and Alina, were excitedly talking about their school activities, their small voices full of innocence. They laughed about a drawing competition and argued about whose teacher was kinder, completely unaware of how much strength their mother used every day just to smile normally. Aisha looked down at them and felt a deep warmth in her heart. They were the reason she kept moving forward even when life felt heavy. 2 years ago, she never imagined she would be standing here alone, managing everything by herself. Once, she lived in a large house with shining floors, expensive furniture, and servants who handled every small task. Back then, she never worried about money or safety. But that life came with a price she slowly realized was too high: fear, silence, and a constant feeling that danger was always close. After her divorce, she moved into a small apartment in a simple neighborhood. Life became harder, but it also became honest. Now she counted every expense carefully and worked long hours at a clothing shop, yet she slept peacefully knowing her children were growing up in a safer environment. The traffic light remained red and cars continued passing quickly. Aisha checked both sides of the road, her protective instinct stronger than ever. She squeezed the twins' hands gently, reminding them to stay close. As she waited, her mind wandered briefly, thinking about the list of things she needed to do that day: grocery shopping, school fees due next week, and finishing extra work hours to earn a little more money. Her life was built from small responsibilities now, not grand promises. And strangely, she had learned to find comfort in this simplicity. When the signal finally changed, people began crossing together. Aisha stepped forward carefully, guiding the children through the moving crowd. Halfway across the street, something made her slow down. She didn't know why at first, maybe a familiar presence, maybe instinct. Her eyes lifted automatically toward the opposite sidewalk, and then her heart suddenly stopped beating normally. Standing there, only a few meters away, was Armin. For a moment, she thought she was imagining things. The world around her blurred as memories rushed back without permission. Armin looked exactly as she remembered: tall, confident, dressed perfectly in a dark coat that made him stand out among everyone else. There was still that powerful aura around him, the kind that made people move aside without realizing it. He looked successful, untouchable, as if life had never challenged him. But what truly froze Aisha in place was not just seeing him. It was the woman standing beside him. The young woman held his arm comfortably, laughing at something he had just said. She looked elegant and carefree, completely at ease next to him. The sight hit Aisha like a sudden storm. Her chest tightened, and for a second she forgot how to breathe. She had prepared herself for many difficult moments after the divorce: loneliness, financial struggles, judgment from relatives, but she had never prepared for this. Seeing him happy with someone else felt like reopening a wound she believed had already healed. At that exact moment, Armin looked up. Their eyes met across the busy crossing. Time seemed to slow down. The noise of traffic faded, and even the twins' voices disappeared from her ears. His expression changed instantly. Surprise appeared first, followed by something deeper: guilt, confusion, maybe regret. It lasted only a second before he quickly controlled his face again, returning to his usual calm expression. But that 1 second was enough to shake Aisha completely. Her steps became heavier as she continued walking. She forced herself not to stop, not to stare, not to show weakness in front of strangers. Inside, however, emotions clashed violently. Memories of their early marriage flashed through her mind. His laughter, the way he used to protect her, the promises he once made about forever. She remembered believing that she was the center of his world. Now she realized how fragile those beliefs had been. The twins pulled her hands, asking why she had slowed down. Their innocent voices brought her back to reality. She blinked quickly, hiding the tears forming in her eyes, and smiled at them reassuringly. They could not see her pain. They deserved a mother who felt strong even when she wasn't. As she reached the other side of the street, she resisted the urge to look back. Every step felt like walking away from a chapter of her life that still held pieces of her heart. That single glance had awakened emotions she thought were buried forever: love, betrayal, sadness, and unanswered questions. She realized healing was not a straight path. Sometimes, one unexpected moment could bring the past crashing into the present without warning. Holding her children closer, Aisha continued walking forward into the crowd, unaware that this ordinary morning had just become a turning point in her emotional journey, a moment that would force her to confront feelings she had avoided for years and finally understand what letting go truly meant. After crossing the street, Aisha kept walking even though her legs felt weak and heavy. She held her twins' hands tightly, almost as if she feared losing them in the crowd. The noise of the city slowly returned to her ears, car horns, people talking, shopkeepers calling customers, but inside her mind everything remained restless and loud. She tried to focus on her children's cheerful conversation, nodding and smiling when they spoke, yet her thoughts kept returning to the same moment again and again. Seeing Armin after 2 years had shaken something deep inside her that she believed time had already healed. As she walked toward the bus stop, memories began rising one by one, clear and vivid like scenes from a movie she could not pause. She remembered the first time she met him. Back then she was a simple girl working at a cafe, dreaming about a peaceful life and a loving family. Armin entered her world like a storm, confident, charming, and mysterious. Everyone around him showed respect mixed with fear, but with her he was gentle and attentive. He listened carefully when she spoke, remembered small details about her life, and made her feel special in a way no one ever had before. Slowly she fell in love with the man she believed he was. Their early marriage felt magical. He gave her comfort, security, and a lifestyle she had never imagined. Expensive dinners, beautiful gifts, and a large house made her feel like she had stepped into a dream. But more than luxury, she loved the way he looked at her in those days, as if she was his piece after a long, tiring world. He used to promise that no harm would ever come to her while he was alive. At that time she believed love alone could protect them from everything. However, small changes began appearing slowly, almost invisibly. Armin started coming home late at night. His phone rang constantly, and he often stepped outside to answer calls in a low voice. Unknown men visited the house, speaking to him seriously before leaving quickly. Aisha noticed fear in the eyes of some people who worked for him, and rumors about his dangerous business connections reached her ears through neighbors and relatives. Whenever she asked questions, he reassured her with a smile, saying she worried too much and that everything he did was for their future. At first she trusted him completely. But trust began to crack when arguments replaced laughter. He became distant, sometimes angry without reason. There were nights when she waited alone at the dining table for hours, food growing cold while her heart filled with worry. She realized she no longer understood the man she had married. The warmth between them slowly turned into silence. The turning point came when she became pregnant with twins. Instead of feeling only happiness, she also felt fear. She started imagining her children growing up surrounded by secrets, bodyguards, and danger. One evening, she overheard a tense phone conversation that made her heart freeze. She didn't understand every word, but she understood enough to know his world was far from safe. That night she could not sleep. She kept looking at her growing belly and asking herself one question: what kind of life would her children have if she stayed? After the twins were born, her protective instincts grew stronger. She wanted laughter, normal school days, and peaceful evenings for them, not fear or hidden threats. But Armin believed power and wealth were enough to guarantee happiness. Their arguments became frequent and painful. He loved his children, but he could not leave the life he had built. For him, it was identity and survival. For her, it was a prison she needed to escape. The decision to leave was the hardest choice she had ever made. Many people warned her that walking away from such a powerful man would ruin her life. Some said she was ungrateful, others said she was foolish to give up comfort. But Aisha knew that comfort without peace was another form of suffering. The divorce process was cold and emotionally exhausting. Even though Armin never stopped her, his silence hurt more than anger would have. It felt as if both of them knew love alone was no longer enough to hold their worlds together. Life after separation was not easy. She moved into a small apartment, learned to manage bills, and searched for work while raising 2 babies. There were nights she cried quietly so her children wouldn't wake up. She missed the good memories but reminded herself why she had left. Slowly she built a new routine, one based on independence rather than dependence. She convinced herself that she had accepted the past and moved on. But seeing him that morning proved something different. Watching him stand beside another woman, smiling the same way he once smiled at her, made old emotions return unexpectedly. It was not jealousy alone. It was the realization that time had moved forward for him too. The life they once shared existed only in her memories now. As the bus arrived, Aisha helped the twins climb inside and sat near the window. She stared outside as the city passed by, feeling both sadness and clarity. She understood that memories do not disappear just because we choose to leave someone. They stay quietly inside us, waiting for a moment to return. Yet she also realized something else. Those memories no longer controlled her future. They were part of her story but not the ending. Holding her children close, she took a deep breath and looked ahead. The past had followed her for a moment, but she knew she still had the strength to keep moving forward, even if her heart needed more time to fully let go. That evening, after a long and exhausting day, Aisha finally returned home with the twins. The small apartment felt warm compared to the cold air outside, and the familiar smell of home gave her a little comfort. She helped the children change their clothes, prepared a simple dinner, and listened patiently as they shared stories about school. Ian proudly showed a drawing he had made, while Alina complained about a classmate who refused to share crayons. Aisha smiled and encouraged them, hiding the emotional storm still moving inside her heart. She did not want her pain to touch their innocent world. For them, she wanted life to remain simple and safe. After dinner, she tucked them into bed, kissed their foreheads, and waited until their breathing became slow and peaceful. The room grew quiet, and for the first time since morning, she was alone with her thoughts. She walked slowly toward the window and sat on a chair, looking out at the city lights shining in the distance. Cars moved like glowing lines on the roads, and people somewhere below continued living their own stories. Yet inside her apartment, silence felt heavy. The moment that the crossing returned to her mind again. She replayed every detail, the way Armin looked, the woman beside him, and the brief expression in his eyes when he recognized her. She wondered why that single glance had affected her so deeply. She had spent 2 years convincing herself she was strong and free from the past. She had survived loneliness, financial struggles, and emotional pain. So why did seeing him again make her feel fragile? Questions filled her mind. Did he ever miss their old life? Did he ever regret losing their family? Or had he simply moved forward while she was still carrying pieces of yesterday? Aisha felt angry at herself for even thinking this way. She reminded herself that she was the one who chose to leave, the one who fought for a safer future for her children. Yet emotions were not controlled by logic. Memories and feelings followed their own rules. She remembered nights when Armin used to sit beside her, talking about dreams and plans for the future. He once told her she was the only person who made him feel calm in a chaotic world. Thinking about those moments made her chest ache. She wondered when exactly everything changed. Was it gradual, or had she ignored warning signs because she loved him too much? Sometimes love makes people overlook truths they are afraid to face. Her thoughts were suddenly interrupted by the vibration of her phone on the table. The sound echoed loudly in the quiet room. She glanced at the screen and saw an unknown number. For a moment she considered ignoring it, but something inside her told her to answer. Her fingers hesitated before she picked up the call. "Hello," she said softly. There was a short silence on the other side before a familiar voice spoke. "Aisha, it's me." Her heart immediately recognized Armin's voice. It sounded calmer than she remembered, almost unsure. She felt her body tense, memories rushing back instantly. For a few seconds she could not find words to respond. He asked if she had reached home safely and said he had not expected to see her that morning. His tone carried hesitation, as if he did not know how to speak to her anymore. Aisha listened quietly, her emotions mixed between anger, sadness, and confusion. She wondered why he was calling now after so much time had passed. He tried to explain that things in his life were complicated and that he hoped she was doing well. His words sounded careful, almost distant. Instead of comfort, they made her realize how much had changed between them. Once, conversations between them flowed naturally. Now every sentence felt formal and unfamiliar. Aisha took a deep breath before speaking. She told him calmly that she and the children were fine and that their lives had moved in different directions. Her voice remained steady, even though her heart was beating fast. She did not ask about the woman she had seen. She did not ask about his life. For the first time she felt no need to know. Armin paused as if wanting to say something more, but the silence between them grew heavy. Finally, she ended the conversation politely, wishing him well before hanging up. When the call ended, she stared at the phone for a long moment, feeling both sadness and relief. Tears slowly filled her eyes, but they were different from the tears she cried after the divorce. These were not tears of helplessness. They were tears of realization. She understood that closure was not something another person could give her through explanations or apologies. Closure came from accepting that some stories end without perfect answers. That night, Aisha allowed herself to feel everything she had been holding inside. The love that once existed, the disappointment, and the strength it took to walk away. She realized she was no longer waiting for him to change or return. The emotional bond that once tied her to him had grown weaker, replaced by acceptance. As she turned off the lights and prepared to sleep, a strange calmness settled in her heart. The past still hurt, but it no longer controlled her. She understood that healing was not about forgetting someone completely, it was about learning to remember without breaking. And for the first time since that unexpected morning, she felt that she was finally moving closer to peace. The days that followed slowly returned to normal, but something inside Aisha had quietly changed. The painful meeting at the crossing and the unexpected phone call no longer felt like wounds that kept reopening. Instead, they became moments that helped her understand her own strength. Life continued with its usual rhythm. Early mornings, preparing breakfast, rushing the twins to school, and long hours at work. Yet she noticed that her heart felt lighter than before. It was not because the memories had disappeared, but because she had finally stopped fighting them. She accepted that the past was part of her story, but it no longer defined who she was becoming. Every morning, she woke up before sunrise and enjoyed a few peaceful minutes alone while the city was still quiet. She would stand near the kitchen window, watching the sky slowly turn golden, and think about how far she had come. 2 years ago, she had left a life filled with luxury but also fear and uncertainty. At that time, she doubted whether she would survive on her own. She had worried about money, about raising children without support, and about facing society's judgment. Many people had predicted she would eventually regret her decision. But now, standing in her small apartment filled with laughter and warmth, she realized she had gained something far more valuable than comfort. She had gained peace. At work, her confidence also began to grow. Customers noticed her kindness and sincerity, and her manager started trusting her with more responsibilities. She learned new skills, managed accounts, and even helped decorate the shop displays. For the first time in years, she felt proud of achievements that belonged entirely to her. No one's power or wealth stood behind her success. It came from her own effort. This realization gave her a quiet sense of independence she had never experienced before. Meanwhile, the twins continued to fill her life with joy. Ayan and Alina were growing quickly, their personalities becoming stronger each day. They laughed freely, made friends easily, and talked about their dreams without fear. Watching them play in the park one afternoon, Aisha noticed how carefree they looked. Their laughter echoed through the air, pure and innocent. In that moment, she understood that leaving her old life had been the right decision. Her children were growing up surrounded by normal experiences. School events, simple birthday celebrations, and evenings filled with stories instead of tension. Sometimes, memories of Armin still appeared unexpectedly. A song on the radio or a familiar place in the city would remind her of the life she once shared with him. But the memories no longer caused sharp pain. They felt distant, like chapters from a book she had already finished reading. She began to see their relationship more clearly, understanding that love alone cannot survive when two people want completely different lives. She no longer blamed him or herself. Both of them had simply chosen paths that could not exist together. One weekend, while cleaning old drawers, she found a small photo from their early marriage. In the picture, they were smiling, standing close together, full of hope for the future. She looked at it for a long time, expecting sadness, but instead she felt gratitude. That relationship had taught her important lessons about courage, self-respect, and the importance of emotional safety. Without those experiences, she might never have discovered her own strength. She placed the photo back gently, not as a symbol of loss but as a reminder of how much she had grown. As weeks passed, Aisha began allowing herself to dream again. Not dreams about wealth or grand promises, but simple dreams. Continuing her education, opening a small boutique someday, and giving her children opportunities she never had. For the first time, her future felt open and hopeful rather than uncertain. She realized happiness did not arrive suddenly. It grew slowly through small moments of stability and self-belief. One evening, as the sun set behind the buildings, she sat on a park bench while the twins played nearby. The sky turned orange and pink, and a gentle breeze moved through the trees. She watched her children run toward her, laughing loudly, and she felt a deep calm settle inside her heart. She understood that healing had quietly happened without her noticing. The woman who once felt shattered by a single glance was no longer broken. Aisha smiled softly, realizing that moving forward did not mean forgetting the past. It meant learning from it without carrying its weight forever. She no longer compared her life to Armin's or wondered about his choices. His path belonged to him and hers belonged to her. The freedom she felt now came from accepting herself fully, her struggles, her courage, and her resilience. As she held her children's hands and walked home under the fading light, She felt something she had not felt in a very long time: genuine peace. The journey had been painful and uncertain, but it had led her to a stronger version of herself. The glance that once shattered her had unknowingly become the moment that completed her healing, allowing her to finally step into a future built not on fear or memories, but on hope, independence, and quiet happiness.